I am one of the consultants here at Implementation Specialist. Today, I am going to be presenting and showing everybody all about workflow. Now, workflow is something that Dynamics has really done a wonderful job with. We have all different types of options to track and trace what everybody wants to put in the system versus what can be put in the system and approved to be. This is a really great feature that since GP 2013 R2 has had a great starting point, and every version since 2013 R2 has absolutely improved on workflow in various areas and modules within GP itself. Now, one of the big questions you guys might be looking at is, why use workflow? Will it work for me? Is it going to help my business grow? Well, the reason you want to use workflow is for three different reasons: accountability, efficiency, and of course, no more paper. The accountability of somebody wanting to put someone into the system actually puts the control within the system. They may want to put it in, but it still has to be submitted, reviewed, and approved before it can even be used. Most often than not, you're going to notice that workflow is directly within the purchasing module. That's one of the most important modules you're going to sit here and think about workflow with. Somebody wants to enter in a vendor. We want to make sure it's an approved and an accepted vendor for the organization. And what about purchase orders? What about entering in invoice amounts and invoicing transactions? These are all different areas just within the purchasing module itself where workflow is able to be best utilized. So if somebody wants to enter in a vendor, there should be some sort of control over who can enter it, not only just to make sure it is a good vendor for the company, but also that the information being entered into their vendor maintenance card is 100% accurate. So once they go to submit it, the system is automatically going to tell the manager set in the workflow that, hey, guess what? We've got a new task for you. We need you to approve something. So now Great Plains has done an amazing job by sitting there saying, well, how are we going to route it? Who are we going to transition this to? And how do we have it set up? They've even come back and mastered it so far to where you can actually just get an action email, meaning that you can get the information sent to you via email of, here's your new vendor. You want to approve it? Do you want to delegate it out to somebody else, or do you want to reject this vendor that was submitted to you? It'll also give you a great templates or even add-ins to sit there and say, well, I want to actually see this vendor card, but I can't get into GP. Can I get a screenshot or a view of it in my email? The answer is yes. We can bring over almost anything. The system has been fully leveraged and utilized by just adding what somebody would think is a simple step of workflow into your organization. Now, with efficiency, this stops people from having to get up out of their desk and go ask their manager for a sign off on a vendor card or a vendor packet or a purchase order, waiting for somebody to sit there and say, yes, go ahead, or sending emails back and forth so there's some sort of record. This actually holds all of those steps inside of GP itself. So now once you submit it, a purchase order or a vendor record, it's automatically going to stamp that record and say, hey, guess what? Erica submitted this at 1:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 19th, 2018. And then when it gets approved, there's going to be another stamp record of who approved it and where it was sitting in the chain of your workflow. And of course, now with these time and date stamp signatures, you don't need to hold on to that paper. You don't need to sit there and say, okay, well, I've got a signature on my paper saying, okay, this is approved. We don't have to make sure we're holding it, filing it, storing it. It's all in the system. So it gives you a great peace of mind knowing you have your information, it's all written down, it's all approved, and you've got the control in your accounting department that you really need and that you're looking for. Now with workflow, there's a couple of different things. There are some prerequisites in order to activate your workflow within GP. Now, there's an application for when we're performing your GP install, and it's called Web Services. This is something that an IT person or your GP partner can come on out and take care of and install for you. It's not an overly lengthy process. It's just a routine item that GP would need to sit there and associate your email with the workflow itself. We'll also need the email account set up and configured for workflow. Now, where that's going to be located is in our main GP screen. We're going to go up to this GP menu toolbar, and we're going to go down to Tools, Setup, System, and towards the bottom, we've got Workflow Setup. Now, this window needs to be completely configured so GP can take the email and send it out to the correct person. And we could say, okay, here's our outgoing email. This is where we want to send it. Now, this is set up right now in our test system. So this is designed towards implementation specialists. So you're going to have different outgoing mail servers and authentication. And to enable email actions is the most important thing. I did discuss this on a prior workflow. Feel free to email us, let us know exactly what you need, what you're looking for, or if you're just looking for that webinar for the initial workflow setup. And last but not least, and this is quite important, on your users. Whoever you plan to start partaking in your workflow setup, your users on creation need to have, let's take a look at me, their directory account associated. Now, normally when you set up users in the past, this is something that you may not have seen at all, you may not have looked at, or even had a functionality for. Now we do, because now everything's going to be associated with our Windows directory and our login for our workstation, along with our GP ID. So now what we're doing is we're associating the two. And this helps also prevent anybody from logging into another station with somebody else's username to try to enter something in that way, if it ever comes to it. But this will also make sure that nothing can get put through the system under my login, Erica, and under my Windows login. So now it doesn't have to be the same naming structure. Your GP name, your GP user ID name, Erica, that is not my Windows login. All I'm doing is associating it right here with my Windows account. So all I would normally do is just enter Erica, tab off, and it'll automatically find, and that's my Windows account association. So now I can't go on Susie Q's workstation and log into my GP account under her workstation and start submitting purchase orders or vendor submissions, because it's not going to recognize it and it's going to automatically reject it, thinking somebody's trying to circumvent the system. So GP completely takes care of itself auditability that way. So once we make sure we've got all of the users set up with their directory account, and when you go to look at your looking magnifying glass, you're going to see here that it's going to tell you who's got a Windows account and who doesn't. And I just created from one of my colleagues, I just used his Windows account and set him up with a GP user ID. So he'll be getting a lot of the fun emails today. Those are really the three prerequisites we really need to worry about in order to set up workflow. Now, today our agenda on this webinar is going to be going over the workflow calendar, entering in the workflow email. If GP does a great job in supplying us templates for every specific type of email, whether it's, hey, I submitted something to you, or guess what, I approved it. Whether the email transactions going back and forth, they provided templates, so we can either use those templates as is, we can add on to it, or we can create brand new ones. So we'll go over exactly what they look like and where they're located. And then, of course, we're going to go through the workflow maintenance. Now, the workflow maintenance is just literally a fancy word for this is where we're going to set up workflow. That's it. So it's not overly crazy. And once we set up the workflow calendar once, it'll never have to be set up again. You won't need to alter it at all. And that's what we're going to start to go through. So on our toolbar here, we're going to hit the GP toolbar. We're going to go to Tools. We're going to go to Setup, and then we're going to hit up company. So now workflow right here has all of the 3 components we're going to be working in today in one area. So let's start with the workflow calendar. This is really important. This is really what you want to sit there and say, well, I want to give Erica 3 days to approve a transaction. Okay, that's great. That's a great business rule to set up. However, we also have to take into account the business work days. So the clock starts ticking the second we want to submit an item for an approval. Well, we need to make sure our start time and our end time for work and the working days are in here accurately, along with any non-working days. So this way, when we're talking about I have 3 days to approve it from once it's sent, if somebody were to send a submission at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday, well, I'd have till Monday at 3:59 p.m. to answer that approval or not. So what we're really sitting here saying is now we need to account for the days we're not working. So then those 3 days are literally just Monday through Friday with these certain hours only. It makes sure that it gives you a realistic goal when you want to get your response for your approver or your denying back. So we want to make sure we do set up the Christmas days and the non-work days. I'm sure you're going to notice that now any new GP demo environment or a testing login environment now starts with the year 2027. For anybody that doesn't know, 2017 actually was the year that was the test date for as long as I can remember in GP world. So once we surpassed that date, the latest version of GP, they gave us 2027. So now we've got a new GP date. So everything that I'll be working in right now is for 2027. So of course, we're going to want to add any holidays that we have. Christmas Day, if your company gives Christmas Eve, we're just going to add them here. And you're going to do for every holiday that your corporation gives out. And just be mindful, every year as you have new holidays that you're going to be taking off or that you're not going to be, just remember to update it once a year. So then this way, nobody has to worry about the non-work times and making sure that their timeline is correct. Now we're going to go back into our company area. And we're going to go back down to workflow. And we're going to look at our email message setup. And when you do this on your workstation, it's always going to ask you for your Exchange login, which is normally your regular email address and your password. Okay. It's thinking. There we go. Sometimes it takes a minute for it to come up. Now here's all of the email messages that GP automatically gives you and all of the templates. So all of these different document types are all of the different module areas of where we're going to be. So one of the workflows we're going to be working on today is for the vendor approval. Now, we're going to check this off because we just want to look to see what the template is right now. Maybe we want to reconfigure it. But this is what the email is going to look like. Here's your subject. And it's going to even sit here and give you some interesting squiggly lines. These are actually just the GP fields. So we can rework it and say, you know, here's our past deadline, payment terms. We could say, well, you know, we've got the vendor class ID in here. You can look at this drop-down menu and pick up so many different fields that we can look at upon the first view within your email. So when you're getting your email, it is going to go through and say, hey, you've been assigned the task for the whatever our workflow step name is going to be named as, most likely vendor approving step in the vendor approval workflow for this vendor. And then we're going to have a new vendor name. So maybe I want to see a little bit more in the email than just the vendor ID. Maybe I want to see the address. And bring it in here. I've got the address right here. I'm going to hit insert. It's going to go right to where my cursor was. And I'm going to give it a few spaces, and I'm going to put in the city. And let's give it a couple more spaces, and let's put in the state. Now, if you're ever worried about what are these fields and where do they come from, right now we're in the actual vendor approval. So this is for the vendor card. So if you ever have questions, go right back into the main window of what is being submitted and look at it from that view, because it might be easier for you to visualize what you want to see on your email, faced with all the information in here. There we go. So now all of these fields might start to make a little bit more sense, and then you can sit there and say, well, hey, there could be other fields I want to look at. They give you a great option of giving you an additional field checkbox. How many fields do you really want to see? Well, without this being checked off, this gives you the main focus that 90% of companies would normally just want to see. And it'll give you everything pretty much on your vendor card, down to your payment terms ID, your shipping method. Now your additional field, that'll give you almost everything. You've got your banking information that's in the one window for your options. And again, it's all going to be in alphabetical order, which is great when you're looking for something. We even have EFT information we can bring over to show you in your email. So this way you can make a very perfect approval process method. You can approve it via your email without having to log in the GP. And that's something that's amazing. You want to make sure you can see that. So now after you add any of your fields that are within your squiggly lines, as I nicely call them, we can sit here and hit the button validate. And all it's saying is GP says, okay, great, these fields match the document type. So you will get that information pulled off of the card into your email. Now, if somebody wants to reply to an email, this is not encouraged normally, only because your email is strictly for workflow. This isn't a response back to a colleague saying, oh, I have a question about this. No, you can do that right within your actual email once you get it for your submission. So don't feel that you need to have replies sent. This is almost as if a temporary need at some point to where you just want everything CC'd directly to the owner of the company. All the replies would be getting sent to them and being CC'd to them as well. So this normally, I always leave blank. Okay, so those are our message setups. And again, you can go in and grab whichever ones would be needed. Right here, once you're clicking on all, GP is doing a great job by telling you this is the document type, your vendor approval, your receivables batch approval. So as you can see, there's a lot of different email templates because they've expanded so much into where they're going to put workflow in GP systems. So it's not just one area anymore. And in fact, here's been the beginning of workflow since GP 2013 R2. So they started it pretty basic, say, okay, let's get the ball rolling. And you can see here in 2015, they blew the doors off, so to speak. And they just said, no, we're going to throw in so many approvals. There's so many different needs to where everybody would need something here. Excuse me. You can even see in here in 2015 R2, in just one revision version, they even gave you 4 more. Now, again, the first thought that comes to your mind, purchasing. This is normally the #1 area to where people are going to want to incorporate workflow into their business because that's the most high-risk portion of your business is cutting checks, recording invoices for vendors, creating purchase orders, or if your business does requisitions into purchase orders, this will also take care of it. So it's also not just efficient, but it's also auditable. And that's really important when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of what your day-to-day operations in your accounting world are. You want it to be auditable. So here we can see that we have project accounting, payroll, purchasing, sales, and financial, along with document attachment workflows. And now in the latest version of GP 2018, very glad to and excited to let you know that now they've got reminder emails that we can send out for workflow. So if you're coming to the near end time of your decision-making time frame, then hey, guess what? We can send you out an email 4 hours beforehand, so then it won't get rejected. You get a quick, hey, you've got something in this queue. You want to approve it now? And it'll let you do so before your time runs out. Everybody gets so busy into the day-to-day operations of what you're doing, so it's really important that we all remind ourselves from time to time that you've got a task date, not just on your calendars, but there is something very big due here. So being able to add in a reminder email takes another step off of your to-do list, your Expo board list, wherever you're holding all of your reminders. It's impossible for one person to remember everything. So GP did a great job in trying to encourage you to go into the right place. So let's start creating our workflow. And we're going to start it off really simplistic, just as any module. How you want to leverage this application is completely up to you. If you want to start off basic and work your way up to the largest size you can think of, really. You can have it completely broken out into so many pieces to where Erica can approve purchase orders up to $100. Anything over $100 needs a secondary approval. And we can keep raising that bar and going. We can define it in any way, which makes it an unlimited tool right here. So as long as you have some sort of theory or makeup in your head or on paper of exactly who should be approving what, whether it's vendors, letters A to F, and that should be their approval section. However, we're going to segregate it out in your day-to-day work life. We can do that here in GP. So we're going to go to Tools, Setup, and Back to Company. And we're going to go to Workflow, and we're going to go to Workflow Maintenance. Now this is the actual fun area with all of the different modules. You'll be able to see down here on a drop-down menu, here's all of the different modules that Workflow supports. So even in financial, we can have a chart of an account, an actual general ledger account, go through Workflow. So people just can't add accounts willy-nilly, as I put it. They can't just go and do something off on their own without others knowing about it. Or even a general ledger batch approval. That's also another one that's great. So nobody can post it without it being reviewed. Same thing in sales. We've got for receivable batches when we're bringing in your cash receipts. And we're going to stick our heads down in purchasing today. This is where we're going to live. So we're going to start off with the vendor approval. And this is the number one need I've always seen for any company, no matter what they do, what industry they're in, and how their organization is broken out. Vendors always need to be approved. Who puts them in? Are they the same person that approves them? There's always a lot of theories on how things can get thrown into the murky lake with vendors. So this is a really good starting point for any company. So now once we're clicking on vendor approval right here, it's going to give us this window and say, hey, who are our managers? Well, we've got a couple managers. We're going to put in Bo. I'm going to add him, and Erica. Ultimately, you're going to want to put people in here that are going to be on the approval list. Now we're just going to say, well, now we need new workflow. And yeah. Okay. So you're just going to enter in a name and a description. We're going to want to send notifications for completed action. So for instance, here's all of those email templates and where they come from. So we're going to sit here and say, well, when it gets submitted, we're going to want to see some sort of an email notification of, I want to know it got submitted. I want to kind of see tangible, something in my inbox that proves it, other than going into the card and seeing it on the card. Or if you need to go back in and alter the vendor card and you have to resubmit it. You want to know if it was approved or if it was rejected. And if you end up going in to edit it and recall it so you can resubmit it, I want to see if it was recalled. And final approve. You can take as many of those and as little of those as you want. So now allow the approver to delegate the task. What that means is that we're going to let the approver actually change who they want to approve it to. They're on vacation. Well, that needs to be delegated then. We can't stop business just because somebody goes on vacation. That's not very good practice either. So we need to make sure that, yes, we can delegate them tasks if the person is going to go on vacation. Well, should the person that enters the vendors actually approve it? Kind of sort of defeats the purpose. But if you've got a manager jumping in for somebody on vacation, or you just have somebody intermitting in your training, the manager can enter in a vendor and then approve it themselves. There's only really a few instances where you would want that, but again, it's all traceable. So if we do go for something like that, it's perfectly fine. Now in this instance, because I'm demoing it and showing it to you, I'm going to be the originator and I want to show you how exactly it would get approved. Always require at least one approver. 9 out of 10 times, this is going to be checked off. You're going to want at least one person to say yes before it goes through. All right, and if you like, you can use an alternate final approver. As long as that person has the ability in your organization to say yes, then yes, by all means, you can put them. For now, I'm going to put my boss right in here as the final approver. I'm sorry, the alternate approver. So now here's when a task is overdue. What this is saying is, okay, you only have so many hours or days in order to say yes or no. You want to approve it, you want to reject it. So what happens when that time comes out? Well, we can escalate it to the next approver in line, or you can escalate it to the supervisor and say, hey, they didn't remember to approve it or reject it, kind of sitting in here in limbo. Or you can escalate it to anyone else that you would need to. Or we could say, well, if they didn't do it by now, we're going to automatically reject it. Just be careful if we want to do the automatically reject it, because it could just be sitting in your inbox, or somebody may have just normal day-to-day work life. You just got busy. So now I'm going to hit save. And now here's our workflow. So now we're going to want to put steps inside of our workflow. Now we're going to create a workflow for vendor country. So this is going to be a simplistic one to where we're going to say, hey, if any of these vendors are in the country of USA, Erica can approve them. If any of them are not, they have to go to another approver. Split it out. It all depends what's going to work best in your organization. So now here are the conditions. We're going to say that this action is required only when the following condition is met. And our condition is based now on the country. That's how we incorporate our vendors into our organization. So we're going to click on the blue arrow, and just as in almost every other screen in GPU Windows, when you see that blue arrow, it definitely means that you got something to do here. Now here's our conditions. And we're going to say, well, we need the action when, let's see, and we're going to look for the country code. the vendor master country code, when it contains US, we're going to add. Because now we're sitting here saying this is our restriction based on who's going to get this condition. Who's going to get the vendor if it's in the US to approve, and who's going to get the vendor in the UK to approve. Where does that go? We're going to sit here and say add. Now here's really important, because what happens if your condition is not met? If it's not a US vendor, we can automatically reject it, or we can say, well, no, we're ending the actual workflow path, meaning it's stopping at this point, or we can have it continue to another step. 9 out of 10 times, you're going to want to have it continue to the next step, so then it can go to another person to approve. So now here, who's the assignee? Who are we bringing in for this one? Erica is going to approve anything that is USA related. Now here's the time limit and the calendar. So now we could say, well, the time limit is 8 hours, 8 days, or 8 weeks. And as long as we're applying the workflow calendar, it's going to take that time frame away and just worry about your work time. So you're not worrying about approving something at night, over the weekend, or a holiday. So it's really taking the employee and the company into consideration. And now that we've got on the 2018 version, we've got a reminder. So we can set the reminder email to be in 4 hours. So you might have 8 hours, Erica, to approve or reject this, but you're going to get a reminder email in 4 hours if you don't approve it, if you take no action. Now, here's sending messages. So it's automatically going to default it with the message template that is assigned. So right here, this is where it's going to say, well, this is the workflow assignment. Your document is a vendor approval. You can all go back and remember, anything in GPs that is hyperlinked and underlined in blue, it'll bring up a whole nother window for you. So if you really kind of wonder what's going to be in this email, you could see it's the one that we just created. So it's got all of the different information that's going to come off of the card for you. And another great feature in workflow is if your company uses document attachment, we can actually have it included as an attachment on the email that gets sent to you. So if there's a scanned contract for a vendor code, we can have that come right through. As long as you're already using the document attachment, that would sit on the actual window and the vendor card. Say, okay, here's a normal vendor packet. Normally, you'd always keep directly into your filing cabinet. Now you can actually incorporate it directly into GP and always have it on that GP window. And now with the workflow, they merge them together to where you can see that entire vendor packet. So before you make the appropriate decision of approving or rejecting it, you can actually sit there and look at everything that you have in the attachment. Kind of makes life a little bit easier and clearer, especially if you're the one being the approver. And our completion policy. We're saying only one response is needed, where the majority of all of the assignees must be approved, or everybody must approve. That's dependent upon your organization and exactly what your structure is. If you both, I think of it really with workflow in terms to children. If I tell my children, no guys, you're not taking a day off, both your parents must approve where you're going when you're going to a friend's house, or if you want to stay home from school, both of us kind of have to approve it. Well, that's the same thing here for completion policy. As long as one person says it, we're good. Or if we've got 5 approvers, then at least 3 of them have to approve, or all 5. So it is giving you a lot of different options. Now we're going to save this step. And let's put in a new step. Now we're going to say, Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stick in vendor country, and we're going to say that the action is required only when the following condition is met. We're going to go back and we're going to say where the country code contains UK. And this is going to go, I'm going to give this one to Bo. Okay. So now right now we're only set up with 2 different vendors. There. So we've got a country code for US and we've got a country code for UK. So those are our 2 main breakouts of our vendors. Now we're going to save and we're going to go up into the actual workflow here and we're going to make this one active. Just because we input all of this information doesn't mean it's going to start working until we make it active. Once it's active, then and only then will it start using the workflow process on this specific module. I had the vendor card open, and that error that came up completely said, hey, you can't have that open. Sorry. Okay. So now we're going to make it active, and we're going to save. Now this one is ready to go and is sitting right within the system itself. So now let's enter in a vendor card. Okay, now I just put in a vendor ID. And now once I put in test, you're going to see once I tabbed off that it's not submitted and that now we've got a submit button. So now you're still going to have your save and your clear, but now you're going to have your submit. So if somebody actually wants this vendor to be submitted for an approval, they have to hit that submit button. And we're going to just put in a test address and the country code. I'm going to make this one US. And I'm going to hit submit. And at this point, now you get to put in any comments you want. Now, the great thing about this is it hasn't been approved. It's being submitted now, but you cannot use the vendor. You cannot post anything directly to this vendor because it's not approved yet. So you really have a lot of controls when leveraging workflow in any of your modules. So I'm going to just go right back into this vendor. I also want to show you that you can view the history. Now, you can see right here, this is pending approval by Erica Howlett. You can see exactly in workflow, because I'm Erica and I'm logged in, I can approve it, reject it, or delegate it here. We can also view the history. And you can see that there is no action needed on our UK vendors. And you can see that right now it's pending the approval here, and here's the assigned user. We could see when it was submitted, the time and date stamp. This gives you so much information to where it does help people and managers put their minds at ease, knowing that they're not having to worry about this as well. So now I will be getting an email. For the purposes of this webinar, my emails are shut down because you would see a little too many come through during a webinar, should have. So I am leaving those down, but you will get an email dictated with the exact template that we put in there. Now I'm going to approve it. And I can even have comments back. Whether you approve it by your email or you approve it inside of GP, you can still enter comments in. Now here I just put that test vendor is approved, but there's no accounts against it. Now you're actually able to start utilizing that vendor. And in a very similar manner, we could do the same thing and create one for the UK vendors. So now I'm going to put in UK test. And yes. Okay. And let's see. I believe Great Britain was UK. Okay, we're going to skip the UK. My apologies. I do not see it actually listed under here. I'll see if that's a change and let everyone know if that's a change in the 2018, if they changed any of the country codes. You should know. So we'll take a look. And we're going to submit. Let's bring it up and let's look at it. Now it's going to tell you Bo is in charge of approving or rejecting this request, and it's sitting in pending. That it's not US, so it doesn't restrict to Erica's approval destination. It's going directly to Bo's, which is exactly how we set it up. So that's exactly what an outcome that we would want to see. Now, when we're creating a workflow, when we're doing purchase orders, there is a very large likelihood that you actually may be breaking it out tremendously. If you want to break it out by site IDs or by dollar amount, and dollar amount is the number one thing I do see. Within GP, people always want to break out, well, you can have an approval up to $200. Anything above $200, we want it to go to the next approver in line and keep going all the way up through the hierarchy of the company in case you ever need to purchase anything that's even more expensive. You can have different levels. We just have to define and set those levels. And really the hardest part about workflow is knowing what you want before we set it up. So let's see, I can activate this one. So right here, the demo I had set up actually shows that it's got the notifications. Let's go to our blue arrow. And we've got everything coming back to where both sides, the originator and the approver, are both fully in communication and in lines here. You know exactly what PO, now that we're in a purchase order, which PO we are in and where the status is. So here we have everything is always going to be required. We're always going to need an approval, no matter what. So any purchase order that's entered is going to Bo directly. Now, this is not broken out as it can be. And we can break it out as far down deep as you want to. If you want to break it out by the dollars, we can help you do that. If you want to break it out by user A, the buyer, user A, needs to have an approver of manager user X. We can do that too. We can actually create the rules and the structures against each other to where if you're a manager of your partner, where they can enter things in and you can approve them, and vice versa, we can actually correlate those rules to where anything that's got your name on it goes to that person, the correct approver. So if Erica H, my GP ID is just Erica. So wherever Erica were to submit anything in purchasing, it would always go for approval. We can make it user defined, dollar defined, and actually almost anywhere in a purchase order. And you can look at all your fields. Let's look at all of the fields that we can restrict it by. You could say, well, if this purchase order goes to this one address, we can break it out that way. We can, phone numbers, we can restrict it out on note IDs, a purchase order type, if it's a standard or drop ship or blanket. We could say one goes to another area of approvers versus the blanket. Blanket orders are going to the higher end of managers to go get approval, while the standards can go to my cubicle neighbor over here. So to just start it off with, I did want to show you that we're going to do it no matter what purchase order is entered. I want Bo to review mine. And it's going to send them this email. And let's take a look at it. And it's going to give him the purchase order number, the vendor, the document, and the on order amount. We can sit here and actually add document lines to say, well, we also want to see the item description. So we want the item description. We want which purchase order line number it's on. And we can see the quantity ordered. Okay. Perfect. And now we're going to save it. And this is a one-step process. Again, I kept this one for the demo simpler, which anybody can use, bring in. We can activate it for you, deactivate it, or we can break it out as far as you need to break it out with. Save. And it's active. Now, if you ever create a workflow and you don't like it, or maybe it should have went through the test company first, you can always deactivate it right here, and it will not be coming through for anybody to submit anymore. It will, however, track the historical record of actually hit that workflow you just created. So you'll always have some sort of traceability and accountability on every one of your purchase orders. So let's make sure it's active. And let's enter a purchase order. And whoa, $16,000 for one unit. That's a lot. That's where a lot of people start to look at the dollar breakout. And we're going to bring this one in, and we're going to submit. Now we can save it. That's fine, but it's never going to be approved, and you're never going to be able to receive the purchase order against it because it was never approved. So the controls and the locks are in place. Okay, now let's take a look and see what it looks like. And view history. Oh, I submitted it. It's waiting on Bo's email in his desk. Oh, he's going to love me at the end of this. It's waiting on his desk for him to approve it. I promised him only maybe 2 emails to get. Let's load them up. Now, there is one that I did create. I do want to show you. And I made it automatically reject. So in the beginning of this conversation, to where with the securities and the efficiencies that Workflow has to offer, again, I can't take my GP user login to somebody else's Windows station. So I can't go to Janie's desk and just change the GP user ID and put in Erica. That's what happened here. I had went in and logged in as Bo, and it still came up as my workstation, but I was logged in the GP as Bo. So that right there automatically rejected it. The system took care of it. It didn't even come to my desk. It didn't come to my email. The system just said absolutely not. So there are a lot of securities in place to keep your mind at ease as to when people are purchasing $200,000 items or $20 items. The system just sees exactly how you want it written and says, well, no, you can't break the rules. You try to break the rules, it's going to stop right there. So now I'm going to go and show you. Let's go to administration. This has got a really great feature right in here to look at all your workloads. So over under reports and under company, we've got workflow history. And let's use the demo. And let's check mark the box. I want to see the comments. And I'm not going to give it a restriction. I want to see everything. So right here, you can actually see the workflow type is the purchase order approval. You can see the purchase order that was entered, the manager, and the name of the workflow. And you'll see that, Erica submitted this purchase order on 4/19, and it's waiting for it to approve. And we're going to get tons of information to see exactly what's sitting and pending, what's being approved. Well, we've got the final approval on this one, on approving the vendors. So for that test vendor, we did go back in and approve. We've got documentation here to support it. And this is really what gives you a great comfort feeling, is knowing I can see when it was done. I can see the due date they had, who submitted it, who approved it, where all the different steps were. Because once you start a workflow and you use it, you cannot delete that workflow. It's already been used. It's got records against it. So it gives you that entire sense of GP is really taking care of me auditing mine. So now if we ever do have questions come up, hey, who put this vendor in? Do we know what they do? Now we can sit there and actually trace it back. An implementation specialist is always here, ready and willing to help you with any portion of that. And that's your history report. And this is a little bit more of a condensed one than what I have. It can be altered, but at least you're seeing all of the information that you're going to need. What's sitting out there in pending mode? What needs to be approved in any module? This will show you all of your different workflow pending and approved transactions. Okay. Any questions? Any questions at all? Okay. If you do